I was standing in the card aisle at Walgreens when my husband grabbed a birthday card out of my hand and threw it back on the rack hard enough that it knocked two others onto the floor. His voice cut through the quiet store. "We don't have money for this trash." People turned to look. My face burned, not with anger, but with confusion so deep it felt like falling. We had a pension. We had savings. We'd lived carefully for 42 years. I didn't know then that the $4 wasn't the problem. The problem was that our account was already empty. The card was for our granddaughter, Lily. She was turning 8. I'd picked one with a golden retriever puppy on the front because she'd been begging her parents for a dog since she was 4. It cost $3.99. Daniel snatched it from my basket before I even realized he was standing next to me. His hands were shaking when he shoved it back onto the metal rack. That detail is what stayed with me during the silent drive home. Not the public scene, not the staters, the trembling in his fingers. Daniel had always been calm, steady, the kind of man who spoke quietly even when he was upset, who handled problems by thinking them through rather than reacting. In 42 years of marriage, I could count on one hand the number of times I'd seen him truly lose his temper. This wasn't temper, though. This was something closer to panic. I didn't ask him about it in the car. I didn't know what to ask. We drove home in silence, and when we pulled into the driveway, he got out without a word and went straight to the small office off the hallway where he kept all our financial paperwork. I heard the door close. I stood in the kitchen and tried to make sense of what had just happened. We weren't wealthy, but we were comfortable. Daniel had worked in accounting for 37 years before retiring. I'd taught second grade for 29. We both had pensions. We had Social Security. We'd saved diligently, lived below our means, planned for the future the way people our age were supposed to. There was no reason a $4 birthday card should have triggered that kind of reaction. Unless there was something I didn't know. That thought settled into my chest and stayed there. I made dinner that evening the way I always did. Baked chicken, roasted vegetables, rice. Daniel came to the table when I called him. He ate without saying much, answered my questions about his day in short sentences, and went to bed early. I cleaned the kitchen alone, my hands moving through familiar motions while my mind kept returning to the card aisle, to his shaking hands, to the look on his face, something between fear and shame. After I finished the dishes, I went to the small desk in the corner of the living room where we kept the checkbook. I couldn't remember the last time I'd actually looked at it. Daniel handled the finances. That had been our arrangement for decades, established early in our marriage when it made sense. He understood numbers. I understood children and lesson plans and how to make a classroom feel safe. We divided responsibilities and it had worked, or I'd believed it worked. I opened the checkbook and ran my finger down the entries. Deposits appeared regularly, our pensions, Social Security. The amounts were what I expected, but the withdrawals were harder to follow. There were the usual ones, mortgage payment, electric bill, water bill, car insurance, but there were others too. Cash withdrawals, large ones, $500 here, $1,000 there. They appeared every few weeks going back months based on the pages I flipped through. I tried to add them up in my head and lost track. I tried again. The number kept growing. I looked at the balance written at the bottom of the most recent entry. It was lower than I'd expected. Not alarmingly low, but low enough that I understood why Daniel might have reacted the way he did over $4. But I didn't understand why it was low in the first place. I heard footsteps behind me and closed the checkbook quickly. Daniel stood in the doorway in his pajamas, watching me. "What are you doing?" he asked. His voice was quiet, but there was an edge to it I wasn't used to. "I'm just looking at the balance," I said, keeping my tone light, "making sure we're okay." "We're fine," he said. He walked over, took the checkbook from the desk, and tucked it under his arm. "You don't need to worry about this stuff. I've got it handled." He left before I could respond. I sat at the desk for a long time after that, staring at the empty spot where the checkbook had been. The next morning, Daniel left for his weekly golf outing with 3 men from his old office. They'd been playing together every Thursday for almost 10 years. He'd be gone for at least 4 hours. I waited until I heard his car pull out of the driveway. Then I went to the office. The room was small, barely large enough for a desk and a filing cabinet. Daniel kept everything organized the way he'd kept his work organized, labeled folders arranged by year and category. I opened the filing cabinet and found the folder marked Bank Statements Current Year. Inside were printed statements going back to January. I spread them across the desk and started reading. The deposits were consistent, predictable, but the withdrawals told a different story. Large cash withdrawals appeared multiple times each month, some for $500, many for $1,000, a few for $1,500. I counted back through the months. January, February, March, April, the pattern was the same, thousands of dollars withdrawn in cash over and over. I looked for explanations in the other transactions. Maybe we'd had major repairs I'd forgotten about. Maybe there were medical bills, but I found nothing that explained withdrawals this size, this often. I checked the savings account statement next. The balance was a fraction of what it should have been. We'd built that account over decades. It should have had close to $80,000. The statement showed just under $12,000. My hand started shaking the way Daniel's had in the card aisle. I tried to log into our bank account online to see if there were transactions I was missing. I knew the username. Daniel had set up the account years ago and shown me how to access it, though I rarely did. I typed in the password I remembered. The screen told me it was incorrect. I tried it again, more carefully. Same message. He must have changed it. I tried a few variations, birth dates, anniversaries. Nothing worked. I heard a sound and froze, but it was just the mail dropping through the slot in the front door. I exhaled slowly and went back to the statements. I needed to understand this before Daniel came home. I needed to know what was happening. That's when I noticed something else. Several of the cash withdrawals were marked ATM withdrawal with a location. The same location appeared multiple times, a bank branch in a town 40 minutes away. We had a branch 2 blocks from our house. Why would Daniel drive 40 minutes to withdraw cash? I put the statements back in the folder and closed the filing cabinet. My mind was racing, but I forced myself to move slowly, to leave everything exactly as I'd found it. Then I went to the laundry room where Daniel's jacket from yesterday hung on the hook by the door. I checked the pockets. In the inside pocket, folded in half, I found a receipt. It was a wire transfer receipt, dated 3 days ago, $1,000 sent to an account belonging to Michael Holloway. I stared at the name, trying to place it. Then I remembered. Michael was Daniel's son from his first marriage. We weren't close. Michael lived in Arizona and called maybe twice a year, usually on Daniel's birthday and Christmas. I'd met him perhaps a dozen times in all the years Daniel and I had been married. He was polite but distant. We exchanged pleasantries, and that was all. I'd never known Daniel to send him money. I put the receipt back and hung the jacket where I'd found it. Then I sat down at the kitchen table and tried to think clearly. $1,000 sent to Michael, large cash withdrawals every few weeks, a savings account drained down to almost nothing, and Daniel's reaction in the card aisle, the panic barely disguised as anger. When Daniel came home from golf, I was waiting at the kitchen table. I'd made coffee, even though I hadn't drunk any of it. He came in through the garage, carrying his clubs, looking relaxed in a way that made my chest tighten. "How was your game?" I asked. "Good. Ted finally beat me. I'll never hear the end of it." He smiled, setting his clubs by the door. "What did you get up to?" "I found something," I said quietly. His smile faded. He stood very still. "What do you mean?" I pulled the wire transfer receipt from my pocket and laid it on the table between us. "I found this in your jacket. I want to know why you're sending Michael money." He looked at the receipt but didn't pick it up. For a long moment he said nothing. Then he pulled out a chair and sat down heavily. "It's complicated." "Explain it to me." He rubbed his face with both hands. When he finally looked at me, his eyes were tired. He needed help. He's been going through a rough time. What kind of rough time? He lost his job about 5 years ago, construction work. The company went under. He couldn't find anything steady after that. He started falling behind on bills. Then he lost his apartment. He asked if I could help him get back on his feet. 5 years. The word hung in the air between us. You've been sending him money for 5 years? Not continuously, just when he needed it. How often has he needed it? Daniel looked away. Often. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. How much have you sent him? I don't know exactly. Guess. He was quiet for a long time. Maybe 50,000, maybe more. The number didn't feel real. I repeated it out loud to make sure I'd heard correctly. $50,000? He nodded. Where did it come from? He knew what I was asking. Savings, he said quietly. The retirement account. I moved things around. You emptied our savings account? Not all of it. Daniel, my voice was shaking now. There's $12,000 left. We had almost 80,000. Where did it all go? To Michael, he said, and to keep us afloat while I was helping him. Things got tight. I had to pull from savings to cover our regular bills, too. I couldn't breathe properly. Why didn't you tell me? Because I knew you would worry. I knew you would want to stop. And he's my son. I couldn't just let him end up on the street. So you let us end up there instead? We're not on the street. We're close, though, aren't we? That's why you lost it over a birthday card. That's why you changed the bank password. That's why you've been hiding all of this from me. I stood up. My legs felt unsteady, but I stayed upright. What else haven't you told me? He didn't answer right away. That told me everything. There might be some credit card debt. How much? I'm not sure. Daniel. Maybe 15,000, maybe 20. I had to sit back down. The room felt too small. On what? Covering gaps. When the account was low and bills came due, I'd put them on the card and tell myself I'd pay it off when Michael paid me back. Did he ever pay you back? Daniel's silence was answer enough. I pushed back from the table and walked to the office. I could hear him following me. I opened the filing cabinet and pulled out everything. Bank statements, credit card statements, investment account statements. I spread them all across the desk and made him stand there while I went through each one. The full picture emerged slowly, like a photograph developing. Our checking account was nearly empty. Our savings had been gutted. The retirement account he'd always told me was secure had been drawn down to almost nothing. We had 3 credit cards I didn't even know existed, all of them maxed out or close to it. The total debt was over $23,000. And the pattern was clear once I looked for it. Money flowing in a steady stream, wire transfers to Michael, cash withdrawals that I assumed were also for Michael, payments made on credit cards to keep them current, then more withdrawn to cover the payments. A cycle that had been going on for years while I lived my life believing we were secure. Why? I asked. I wasn't looking at Daniel. I was looking at the papers in front of me. Why didn't you tell me any of this? Because you would have wanted me to stop helping him. Yes, I would have. I turned to face him. Because we're in our 70s, Daniel. We don't have time to rebuild this. This was supposed to be our security, our future, and you gave it away to someone who kept taking and never gave back. He's my son, I know, but I'm your wife, and you never even asked me.
You just decided our entire financial future on your own. I was trying to protect you from worrying. You don't protect someone by lying to them. You don't protect someone by destroying their security behind their back. My voice broke. I trusted you. For 42 years, I trusted you with everything, and you used that trust to hide this from me. He tried to reach for my hand, but I pulled away. What else haven't you told me? That's everything. Are you sure? Because an hour ago, I thought everything was fine. I thought we had savings. I thought we were secure. So forgive me if I don't just believe you anymore. He flinched at that. Good, he should. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed next to a man I'd been married to for 40 decades and felt like I was sleeping next to a stranger. Everything I thought I knew had been recontextualized. Every time he told me not to worry, every time he handled the bills alone, every time he changed the subject when I asked about our accounts, all of it had been part of a pattern of hiding the truth.
The next morning, I called the bank. I explained that I needed to separate our accounts. The woman on the phone was kind but professional. She explained the process. I would need to come in with identification. We would need to divide the assets. I told her I understood. She gave me an appointment for that afternoon. Before I left, I told Daniel where I was going. He asked if I was leaving him. I told him I didn't know yet. I told him I needed to protect myself since it was clear he wasn't going to. At the bank, I met with a financial advisor named Patricia. She was maybe 50 with gray hair and a calm demeanor that reminded me of the school counselors I used to work with. She reviewed everything I brought. She asked careful questions. When I told her I hadn't known about any of the withdrawals or the debt, she paused. "Did you consent to this use of your joint funds?" "No," I said. "I didn't even know." She made a note. "What you're describing could be considered financial abuse. Even in a marriage, both parties have a right to know about and consent to major financial decisions." The word abuse felt too strong. This was Daniel, my husband. He hadn't meant to hurt me. But Patricia's expression was serious. "Intent doesn't change impact," she said gently. "You were kept in the dark about decisions that affected your security. That's a violation of trust at minimum." She helped me open an account in my name only. I transferred my pension deposits there. My Social Security would go there too. What little remained in our joint account would stay joint for now, but I would monitor it. She also gave me the number for a lawyer who specialized in elder financial issues. When I got home, Daniel was sitting at the kitchen table. He looked like he hadn't moved since I left. "I talked to Michael," he said. I set my purse down. "And?" "He said the money is done, that I can't help him anymore." His voice was flat. "He said I was abandoning him. He hung up on me." I felt a flash of anger so sudden it surprised me. "And what about abandoning me? Did you think about that while you were sending everything we had?" "He thought I could fix it," he said quietly. "I thought if I just helped him a little more, he'd get stable, he'd find work, he'd pay me back. But he never did. Every time I thought it was over, he'd call again. His car broke down. He needed money for repairs. Then he got a DUI and needed money for a lawyer. Then another DUI. Then he got in trouble with his landlord and needed first month, last month, and security deposit for a new place. It never stopped. And you never told me." "Because I was ashamed," he finally looked at me. "I was ashamed that my son couldn't get his life together. I was ashamed that I couldn't fix it. And I was ashamed that I kept choosing him over us." It was the first true thing he'd said, but it didn't change what he'd done. Over the following weeks, I learned things I should have known years ago. I met with the lawyer Patricia recommended. I learned about financial rights in marriage.
I learned about elder financial abuse, even when it's committed by a spouse. I learned that what Daniel had done, keeping me uninformed and using joint assets without my knowledge or consent, had legal implications. I also learned exactly how bad our situation was. After the lawyer reviewed everything, she gave me a clear picture. We had roughly $15,000 in liquid assets left. We had $23,000 in credit card debt. Our retirement accounts had been depleted to the point where they'd barely cover us for a few years if we were very careful. The house was paid off, which is the only thing saving us, but we'd need to live on much less than I'd planned. Luxuries were gone. Vacations were gone. The safety net was gone. Michael never called back, not to apologize, not to ask if we were okay, not to offer even a fraction of what was given to him. Daniel called him twice. Both times it went to voicemail. The silence told us everything we needed to know. I thought about leaving. I considered it seriously for several weeks, not because I didn't love Daniel, but because I wasn't sure I could trust him again. And what was a marriage without trust? In the end, I didn't leave, but I didn't stay the same way either. I insisted on full transparency. Every account was in both our names, with both of us having equal access. Every bill was reviewed together. Every financial decision was made together. I took over managing the budget because I no longer trusted him to do it alone. He agreed to all of it without argument. I also insisted on something else. We would tell our daughter what had happened. Daniel resisted at first. He didn't want her to know. But I told him secrecy was what got us here. If we were going to rebuild anything, it had to be built on truth. We sat down with Sarah on a Sunday afternoon. She lived 20 minutes away with her husband and 2 kids, Lily and her younger brother. We told her everything. About Michael, about the money, about how close we'd come to losing everything. She was quiet for a long time when we finished. Then she looked at her father and said, "How could you do this to her?" Not to us, to her. She understood something I was still learning. Daniel's choices primarily hurt me. I was the one who'd been kept in the dark. I was the one whose security had been gambled away without my consent. Sarah offered to help with the credit card debt. I told her no, this wasn't her responsibility, but I appreciated that she'd asked. It reminded me that not all children take endlessly without giving back. Lily's birthday party happened 3 weeks later. I bought her a card. This one cost $5. It had a puppy on the front and a terrible pun inside that I knew would make her laugh. I bought it with money from my own account, the one only I controlled. I signed it and put a $20 bill inside, also from my account. When I handed it to her at the party, she hugged me and thanked me and ran off to show her friends. Daniel watched from across the room. We didn't talk about it. We didn't need to. If stories like this resonate with you, you may want to stay with this channel. These stories are told for people who understand. I still don't know if our marriage will survive this. Some days I think it will. Some days I'm not sure I want it to. What I do know is that I will never again allow someone else to control my financial security without my full knowledge and consent. I will never again mistake silence for protection, and I will never again assume that trust means I don't need to verify. The $4 birthday card wasn't the problem. It was the symptom of a much larger betrayal. Years of secrecy, years of decisions made without me, years of my security being quietly dismantled while I was told not to worry. Daniel may have thought he was protecting me, but what he was really doing was erasing me from my own financial life. I am 71 years old. I do not have decades ahead of me to rebuild what was lost, but I have enough time to make sure that what little remains is managed with honesty and dignity. I have enough time to model for our daughter and our granddaughter what it looks like to refuse to be silenced. I have enough time to show them that trust, once broken, requires more than apologies to repair.
It requires action, transparency, and a fundamental shift in who holds the power. Daniel and I are learning to live in this new reality. It is not comfortable, it is not easy, but it is honest. And honesty, I have learned too late, is worth more than comfort ever was. I keep that wire transfer receipt in my desk drawer, not as a weapon, not as punishment, but as a reminder that love does not require silence, that partnership requires equality, and that protection without consent is just another form of control. When I look at that receipt, I don't see just $1,000 sent to Michael. I see years of decisions I wasn't part of. I see a pattern of being managed rather than included. I see the cost of allowing someone else to decide what I needed to know. And I see very clearly that I will never allow that to happen again. We still live in the same house, we still sleep in the same bed, but the relationship we're building now is not the one we had before. This one requires him to be honest even when it's uncomfortable. This one requires me to ask questions even when I'm afraid of the answers. This one is built on verification, not blind faith. Some people might say that's sad, that a marriage shouldn't require that level of vigilance, but I've learned that vigilance isn't the opposite of love. Blindness is, and I spent too many years blind to what was happening in my own life. Our granddaughter Lily will turn 9 next year. I'm already thinking about what card to get her. Maybe one with a dog again, maybe something else. It doesn't matter what it costs. What matters is that when I buy it, I'll know exactly where the money's coming from. I'll know what we have and what we don't. I'll know because I've made it my business to know. That knowledge, earned through betrayal and loss, is mine now. No one can take it from me. And that $4 card that started everything, the one that was thrown back on the shelf in a public display of panic and shame, taught me something I should have learned decades ago. When someone tries to control your spending on something small, it's almost never about the small thing. It's about what they're hiding. And the only way to protect yourself is to refuse to look away. I'm not looking away anymore.